You think they felt nothing. That's the part that keeps haunting you. Not the ending itself, not even the distance. It's the silence after. The way they could look so calm while you were unraveling. The way they could step back, go cold, disappear into themselves, and leave you standing there with all the questions they refused to answer. You replay the last conversations, the change in their tone, the delay in their messages, the strange emptiness in their eyes when you needed warmth the most. And the worst part is not knowing whether any of it was real. Because if they cared, how could they leave like that? How could someone hold you, laugh with you, memorize your little patterns, hear the softness in your voice, and then act like detachment costs them nothing? So you do what every wounded heart does when it has no closure. You invent stories. Maybe they never loved me. Maybe I was too much. Maybe they replaced me emotionally long before they left physically. Maybe I meant less than I thought. But there is another possibility. A darker one. A more complicated one. What if they did feel everything? What if the reason they went cold was not because they felt too little, but because they felt too much, too fast, in a nervous system that was trained to treat closeness like danger? That is the brutal truth most people never understand about avoidant attachment. The avoidant does not always leave because they stopped caring. Sometimes they leave because caring activated something they do not know how to survive. And if you don't understand that, you will misread the entire story. You will mistake shutdown for indifference, distance for freedom, silence for peace. But inside many avoidant people, peace is not what is happening at all. What is happening is overload. The human nervous system is not just emotional, it is biological. It keeps score in chemistry, in muscle tension, in heartbeat, in sleep patterns, in how quickly the chest tightens when intimacy becomes unavoidable. For someone with avoidant attachment, closeness can trigger the same threat circuitry that other people feel during conflict, humiliation, or loss of control. The amygdala starts scanning for danger. Cortisol rises. The body shifts from connection into self-protection, and because this happens so fast, they do not always experience it as fear. They experience it as irritation, numbness, exhaustion, the urge to escape, the sudden conviction that something is wrong. Not always with you, just wrong. Wrong to need, wrong to explain, wrong to stay in a feeling that asks something from them they were never taught how to give without losing themselves. So when the relationship gets deeper, when your love becomes real enough to matter, when vulnerability stops being cute and starts becoming intimate, their system can interpret that emotional intensity as pressure, even if you are not pressuring them, even if all you are asking for is honesty, consistency, reassurance, presence. To a regulated heart, that feels human. To an avoidant nervous system, it can feel like suffocation. And this is where people get confused, because the avoidant often looks the coldest at the exact moment they feel the most internally activated. They don't start shaking in front of you. They don't fall apart in your arms. They don't say, "I'm overwhelmed and terrified of how much this matters to me." They detach. They intellectualize. They create space. They delay. They disappear into routines, work, distractions, logic, anything that gives them distance from the emotional heat. That distance is not random. It is regulation by withdrawal. It is the oldest pattern they know. And when you chase them through that silence, trying to get clarity, trying to repair, trying to be chosen harder, something tragic happens. Your pursuit confirms their fear that intimacy is invasive, demanding, impossible to survive. Your pain is real, But their nervous system does not read your pain as love. It reads it as more activation. So they pull back further. And you think, there it is. Proof. They never cared. But the secret emotion under avoidant withdrawal is often not relief. It is overwhelm, mixed with grief they do not know how to process. This is why the aftermath can become so psychologically twisted, because once you leave, really leave, not protest, not threaten, not circle back with one more long message trying to explain your worth, something in them changes. The pressure is gone. The activation drops. The emotional smoke clears. And suddenly, without your presence constantly stimulating their defense system, they can feel what was buried underneath it. Loss. Not clean, obvious loss, not the cinematic kind. Avoidants rarely collapse in ways the world recognizes. Their grief is delayed, fragmented, private. It shows up at strange hours and in strange forms. A random song and their chest tightens. A familiar street and they feel a hollow ache they cannot name. They reach for their phone without thinking. They open your chat, stare, close it again. They tell themselves it's nothing, then dream about you 3 nights later. This is why silence becomes the core concept that changes everything. Silence is not just absence. Silence is exposure. When you stop reaching, stop explaining, stop trying to manage their emotions for them, the silence becomes a mirror. There is no one left to blame for the tension they feel, no one left to push against, no emotional noise to drown out the truth. And in that quiet, the avoidant is often forced into the one place they spend their life trying to avoid, their own internal world. That is where your absence starts becoming loud. At first, they may feel powerful, in control. They may distract themselves, go out more, post more, talk to other people, act unnaturally light. Their dopamine system will search for quick relief, novelty, stimulation, validation, movement, anything that keeps the body from sinking into the emotional withdrawal that real separation creates. But dopamine is not attachment. It is only temporary escape. And when the novelty fades, the emptiness underneath becomes harder to outrun. Because what they miss is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is microscopic. The way you softened the room, the way your name sat in their phone like certainty, the way you noticed small things without needing applause for it, the way your presence regulated parts of them they never admitted were dysregulated. They may not say, "I miss you." They may feel restless for days and not understand why. They may become unusually irritated. They may feel a strange heaviness at night. They may compare everyone to you without meaning to. They may stalk your silence, waiting to see if you break first. Because now the dynamic has changed. When you were available, they could postpone feeling. Your presence held the relationship in place. Your effort kept the emotional current alive. Your texts, your understanding, your willingness to revisit hard conversations, those things gave them the luxury of emotional delay. They could pull away and trust that you would bridge the gap. But when you stop bridging it, the gap becomes real. And real gaps frighten avoidance more than closeness does. Because closeness can be controlled through distance. But loss? Loss has no off switch. That is when they start revisiting everything with a different mind. Not the defensive mind, the deprived one. They remember moments they barely reacted to when they happened. Your face when you were trying not to cry. the tenderness in the message they never answered properly. The one time you asked, with that quiet exhaustion, "Why does loving you always feel like I have to disappear first?" They replay it now, because now there is space to feel the impact. The nervous system that once screamed, "Too much, too much, too much," now whispers something far more dangerous to them. What if I lost something real because I was too afraid to hold it? That thought can haunt an avoidant for a very long time. But here is the part no one tells you. The part that may hurt, but it will set you free. Their delayed emotions are not your job to wait for. Yes, they may miss you. Yes, they may feel grief. Yes, they may begin obsessing in the quiet, checking, wondering, comparing, regretting. But if your entire healing becomes a strategy to provoke their awakening, you are still trapped inside their pattern. You are still organizing your value around whether someone who could not stay finally learns what you are worth after you're gone. That is not power. That is emotional servitude in a prettier outfit. And many people secretly do this. They call it detachment, but underneath it is still performance, still hope, still a hidden contract with the universe that says, if I disappear correctly, they will come back transformed. If I become silent enough, beautiful enough, unavailable enough, it will finally trigger their realization. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But if you are healing only to be witnessed by the one who wounded you, you are not free yet. Because true non-reactivity is not a tactic. It is an identity shift. It is the moment you stop treating your pain like proof that you should love harder. It is the moment you understand that longing can exist without instruction. That someone can miss you deeply and still be too unhealed to love you well. That being unforgettable is not the same as being chosen. That matters, because avoidants are often full of unfinished emotion. But unfinished emotion does not automatically become mature action. Missing you is not the same as repairing. Regret is not the same as accountability. Internal pain is not the same as external change. And this is where so many people break themselves. They sense the shift, the breadcrumb, the sudden text, the random reappearance, the subtle pull. And because they have waited so long to feel wanted, they rush back into the very pattern that erased them the first time. Be careful. An avoidant can feel intense longing when you leave. They can feel panic when they realize you are truly gone. They can even become temporarily more expressive, more open, more emotionally available. But if that awakening has not been anchored by real self-confrontation, by nervous system work, by the willingness to stay present when intimacy becomes uncomfortable, the old pattern will return the moment closeness asks too much again. And then your heart gets broken twice. Once by their leaving, and once by your own hope. So yes, understand them. Understand that they may have cared more than they could tolerate. Understand that their silence may have been full of internal noise. Understand that their distance may have been a trauma response, not a verdict on your worth. But do not turn understanding into self-abandonment. Do not become so compassionate toward their fear that you betray your own. Because while they were protecting themselves from intimacy, you may have been surviving the agony of being loved in fragments. And fragments are not enough for a nervous system that wants safety. Fragments create obsession, hypervigilance, dopamine loops. You start living on intermittent reinforcement, becoming addicted to brief warmth followed by cold absence. Your amygdala learns to scan every text, every pause, every tonal shift for signs of abandonment. Cortisol becomes your background music. You call it love because it is intense. But intensity is not always intimacy. Sometimes it is just your body begging for relief. That is why leaving changes you too, if you let it. Because the real transformation is not that they start missing you. The real transformation is that you stop needing their delayed realization to confirm what you already know. You are not hard to love. You are hard to avoid without consequence. There is a difference. And once you see it, everything sharpens. You stop personalizing another person's shutdown. You stop confusing emotional unavailability with mystery. You stop auditioning for the role of the one who finally heals them. You stop bleeding just to prove your loyalty. You stop translating crumbs into promises. You become still. And that stillness is powerful because it is no longer waiting. It is no longer performing pain in the hope that someone returns to soothe it. It is no longer reaching into closed rooms, trying to make yourself understandable to people committed to misunderstanding their own hearts. You become someone who can love deeply without kneeling before confusion. Someone who can feel grief without turning it into pursuit. Someone who can say, yes, maybe they loved me in the only way they knew how. But I deserve love from someone who knows how to stay. That sentence will save you. Because the final secret is this: when an avoidant feels your absence, the emotion they battle most is not always sadness. It is powerlessness. They are used to controlling intimacy through distance, used to setting the pace by withdrawing, used to holding the emotional upper hand simply because they care in silence while you care out loud. But when you truly leave, when your energy is no longer circling them, when your attention is no longer available on demand, when your life begins to close around your own peace instead of their unpredictability, they lose access to the system that protected them. And now they have to feel, not just you, themselves. That is why some of them come back. Not because the game worked, because the silence did. It forced contact with emotions they had delayed. It stripped away the illusion that they could keep you in emotional storage while they figured themselves out. It made your absence undeniable. But whether they return or not is no longer the point. The point is who you become after surviving someone who could only meet you in pieces. You become precise. You become discerning. You become impossible to confuse with your own longing. And maybe, for the first time in your life, you stop calling being chosen by a wounded person the ultimate prize. Maybe the real prize is this: a regulated body, a clear mind, a heart that no longer begs for half love to become whole, a self-worth so solid it does not tremble when someone cannot meet it. You stop asking, did they ever really care? And start asking, why was I willing to collapse just to be felt by someone who only knew how to love me from a distance? That question changes everything. Because once you answer it honestly, you stop chasing avoidance through emotional fog. You stop romanticizing silence. You stop confusing withdrawal with depth. And you return to yourself. Not the smaller self. Not the pleading self. Not the self who could endure emotional starvation and call it devotion. The real self. The one who knows that being deeply felt in secret is not enough. The one who knows that your softness was never the problem. The one who knows that leaving was not your failure. It was your rescue. So let them feel the silence. Let them meet the emptiness they mistook for freedom. Let them discover, in their own time, what your presence was doing for them. But you? Keep walking. Not to make them chase, not to make them regret, not to prove anything. Walk because your life is worth more than being someone's delayed emotional awakening. Walk because love should not require self-erasure. Walk because peace is not found in finally being understood by the person who broke you. It is found in no longer needing them to. And when you reach that place, something irreversible happens. You stop being the one left behind. You become the one who left the pattern. Forever.